Okay. Calling to order the committee of the whole meeting for Diamond Lake School District 76. Roll call, please.
Ms. Angarola, here. Ms. Beta, here. Mr. Becker. Ms. Hale.
Here.
Mr. Houtman.
Here.
Mr. Condella.
Here.
Ms. Sullivan.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we now open the floor for public comments on agenda items. Do we have any public comments this evening? Okay, there being no public comments, we will move on to presentations.
I have prepared a few words for Dr. Berger, as well as an introduction of the award. And then we have Dr. Lisa West on behalf of the Illinois Principals Association, Lake County, a principal herself in Barrington, who is going to present Erica with the formal award. All right, so good evening, board members, Dr. Berger's family and district leadership team, and many members of the DLS staff. I'm deeply honored to recognize and celebrate Dr. Erica Berger as Lake County's Region's Illinois Principal Association Elementary Principal of the Year. I nominated Dr. Berger earlier this year because she exemplifies the D76 core values of Sparkle On. Service lies at the heart of Dr. Berger's leadership. Every decision she makes, every action she takes is guided by this simple yet profound principle of serving everyone in her care. From honoring the veterans visiting the senior living facilities and personally adopting a service dog to bolster the emotional health, well-being, and social interactions of her students and staff members. Passion. Passion fuels Dr. Berger's determination and vision to ensure all students have the educational resources and experiences to make them the best version of themselves. She is determined and passionate about prioritizing and knowing students by name, strength, and need. By teaching them, by name, strength, and need, not only by team teaching with staff, but working with small groups daily and sharing her own storytelling skills. Advocacy. Dr. Berger is committed to amplifying those voices and standing up for the personal and educational rights and dignity of all students. Whether it's advocating for social justice or providing the least restrictive learning environment or providing access to the educational and/or community resources, Dr. Berger is a fierce advocate for her school, her students, and her staff. Respect. Dr. Berger is all about recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every individual, regardless of their background, abilities, or beliefs. Her high level of respect for others fosters understanding, empathy, and cooperation, which are essential for establishing a safe, collaborative culture and climate centered on trust and kindness and love. Kindness. Dr. Berger excels in leading with kindness, in treating others with empathy, compassion, and understanding. She is a role model for everyone in District 76, the assemblies, the recognitions, and the student-focused programs she leads and implements that center on community building, empathy, inclusion, love, and of course, kindness. Love. Dr. Berger lives this mission of love, and it's not just an emotion for her. It is a call to action, a commitment to build a better school community. She has created the Berger Wall of Fame, where students recognized for positive behavior get to take a picture with her and now our superstar Polly. And it's posted on the wall outside of her office. This is a true joy for students to brag about. She is an inspiration and a huge support for those students in times of need and to celebrate their learning, their growth, and positive actions by truly embracing, empowering, and ensuring excellence with and for everyone. Equity. Dr. Berger leads with the promise of fairness, the assurance that every individual has the opportunity to fulfill their potential and has access to resources and programs that they need. She has implemented several family nights throughout the school year that focus on diverse cultural backgrounds of our community, providing opportunities for our students and families to celebrate each other, their customs, and traditions. Opportunity. Dr. Berger is committed to expanding access to opportunities for all, regardless of race, abilities, or socioeconomic status. She believes that every student deserves the chance to succeed, to thrive, and to experience fun and fulfillment at DLS. The many instructional and enrichment opportunities that have been implemented under her leadership are a testament to her strong commitment to providing opportunities for students to grow, thrive, and achieve. She has also taken these opportunities and presented them to colleagues around the state to share the sparkle of DLS and their success. Nurture. Dr. Berger fosters growth and development by nurturing greatness within each and every one of her students and staff members. She is committed to nurturing not only the academic needs of our students, but also the emotional, physical, and intellectual well-being of every individual in order to achieve their full potential. In closing, I want to reaffirm Dr. Berger's unwavering commitment to these values: service, passion, advocacy, respect, kindness, love, equity, opportunity, and nurture. Sparkle on. They are not just words to her. They are the guiding principle that inform every decision she makes and every action she takes. She is much deserving of this honor, and I'm so proud to celebrate her success with all of you. Congratulations and thank you, Dr. Berger. You are the epitome of level up, lean in, and sparkle on. Come on up. We have a crown for Dr. Berger.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. Dr. West, would you like to?
I don't think I need this stool.
Oh, it's, I don't think so. Is it a requirement? You got your pink heels on, so you're good.
So my name is Dr. Lisa West, and I am the Region Director for Illinois Principal Association for the Lake County region. And this is my colleague and fellow board member, Mrs. Tiffany Drake, also the Middle School Principal of the Year for IPA. She's joining us this evening. I'm honored to be here this evening to recognize and share how proud we are to have Dr. Berger be the Lake County Region Elementary 2024 Elementary School Principal of the Year. Congratulations, Erica. And so as part of that, we do have a plaque for her. It is the Elementary Principal of the Year 2024. It's presented to you, Dr. Erica Berger.
Thank you.
As part of the process of becoming Elementary Principal of the Year, yes, Erica was nominated. And after that nomination, she did complete a thorough application process, at which time nearly 500 members, active members of the Illinois Principal Association for Lake County Region voted. There was quite a few nominees in the elementary category. I think there were 6 total. And at the end of all of the voting, Erica rose to the top and leveled up, right? So thank you again. I won't take too much more of your time, but Tiffany and I want to present Erica not only with the plaque, but with some flowers. Congratulations. And then, of course, a little IPA swag.
I love you too. You're so awesome. Thank you. Thank you
Mhm.
very much.
Congratulations, Erica.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're okay. All right. I would first like to start by saying thank you, of course, to the Illinois Principals Association, Lake Region, and its members for this incredible honor. Thank you, Lisa and Tiffany, for being here tonight. Receiving this award from both of you makes it that much more special and meaningful to me. So thank you very much. I accept this award tonight on behalf of all the staff at Diamond Lake School. It is the commitment and dedication of our staff that has allowed us to reach new levels of growth and achievement. Our collaborative practice guides us to find new and innovative ways to embrace, empower, and excel each child each day. From the classroom to the front office, to the cafeteria, to the playground, thank you for making your top priority what's best for kids and for providing the whole child with a loving and nurturing school environment and family atmosphere. I'd also like to thank the district leadership team, coaching me through the ins and outs of finance, curriculum, and personnel, student services, to the world of AI that I'm going to learn to accept. Your knowledge and expertise have made me a stronger, more well-rounded leader. And to my fellow building administrators, thank you for sharing your insights with me and providing me with vertical learning experiences at the 3rd through 8th grade level. To the District 76 Board of Education, thank you for supporting our initiatives and allowing Diamond Lake School to explore new practices and systems to best support our students at the early childhood level. It is your support that has provided us the opportunity to level up, lean in, and sparkle on, especially with our new 4-legged family member. To Dr. Sharma Lewis, thank you for the nomination. I appreciate your kind words and our work together, modeling the power of women in leadership, prioritizing climate and culture, and having the courage to brand yourself and tell your story has provided me with the opportunity to shape my leadership style and make what I thought was impossible actually possible. Learning from you has been a true gift. To my beloved parents, Chuck and Kathy Sampson, who are here tonight, thank you for instilling hard work in me, teaching me to prioritize kindness and to always have care and compassion for others. To my husband and my best friend, John, thank you for believing in me and always sending me the message, "Don't worry, babe, you got this," when I doubted myself. And finally, I remember when I was going through my principal mentorship, I asked my mentor, "How do you find the district that's right for you?" And she told me it's all about fit. Trust me, you'll know when the shoe fits. I'm proud to say that in District 76, it's not just the shoe that fits me, but the tall, sparkly boot. Thank you.
Okay. We have some cookies and some treats for all of you guys. And of course, they say Dr. Berger on them because we're celebrating her tonight. But thank you all for coming. Family, thank you for coming. John, parents, thank you so much. Lisa, it was quite the honor to have you come and present this on behalf of IPA. Polly, you're awesome. Sparkles and Tiffany, thank you. Sparkles, thank you for coming. So we're gonna take just a few minutes. We're gonna have Mr. Hanson take some pictures with Dr. Berger and some of her staff, and maybe with Sparkles and Polly and her family. And then you guys can enjoy a quick treat. And then thank you again for coming and supporting Erica and all the love and compassion that not only that you show Erica, but that you exude through Diamond Lake every day. So thank you so much. All right, we'll take a few minutes break, have a little cookie, and then we'll go on with our meeting. Is that okay? All right.
I don't know that some of them try. Anyway. Okay. Back to the board meeting. Congratulations again, Erica. It's very well deserved. We're very proud of you. Okay, moving on to some more fun for the evening. The winter assessment update.
Right. So we have Dr. Cunningham, who will lead us with our student data winter assessment update. And he will co-present with our principals. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Cunningham. Take it away.
Thank you so much. So welcome back to the data presentations of 23-24. This is our winter edition. Glad to have you along. So before I go into that, sometimes as we learn things about the test, this particular test, the STAR test, we'd like to be able to pass some of that information along to the board. So I've been fortunate. Dr. Sharma Lewis has allowed me to go to something called IASA Level Up. We came up with the name first before IASA, just to be clear. But in that cohort of central office administrators, we've gotten to hear from Dr. Gene Kearns a few times. He's the chief academic officer for Renaissance. And so the last time we saw him, he talked about the STAR test a little bit and really about the Common Core state standards that we use in Illinois. So just a couple tidbits from here. Really, first, there are more standards in the Common Core than there's time to teach them. And so he kind of opens really his presentation talking about that. And to do the math specifically based on Renaissance's estimate, there's 15,000 hours of content to cover in a 9,000 hour student's career in school. So a solution that groups like Renaissance use is they talk about using focus skills from Renaissance to plan instruction. And that term means that these are skills considered essential to underpinning future learning. You have to have this skill to move on. And this is very advantageous to us as we pick our standards for standards-based grading to have a guide that helps us understand what are the enduring concepts that we need to use. So to show you a couple graphs. This is really what Renaissance has ascertained, that out of the 1,114 Common Core skill standards required for students, that only 27% of these 307 actually matter. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but the idea is these ones are ones that really have leverage. And then when you look at reading, there's 918 skills. More of these skills are considered focus skills that build on one another. And so in order to kind of identify these, this is a tool that we've had staff use. This is just a screenshot of kind of the web application for this. But essentially what you're able to do is you're able to find any particular grade level. In this case, it's grade 1. You can hover over it, and then you can click on this one. This grade 1 has a lot of them. You tend to see a lot of standards in the primary grades because everything is new. And then you can see that change as you go along to the older grades. So what staff are able to do is click on this, see what are the essential standards that are considered that you have to build upon for the other. And what is a great tool for teachers is actually before they teach a concept, they can use the drop down on the left and change it to the previous grade to see what was the prerequisite skill the students should have had before they came in, and provide some reteaching. If I was going to give a really simple answer, it could be addition 1 to 10, and then another one, the next skills addition 1 to 100. So I'm giving a very simple idea, but what was the prerequisite that I would need to possibly review with students or provide more targeted intervention for students? So this is a tool that we've been interacting with this year. It's built into our MTSS framework. So we're very grateful to have that. So with that, just to review what we're doing this evening, really we're touching on the first part of priority 1, goal 1, which is improving student growth in English language arts and math. And that would be 100% of our kindergarten through 8th grade students demonstrating growth. So we wanted to see that we want to see 100% of students move. Last time there was a question about the number of kids looking a little bit different from spring to fall. So I wanted to speak to that for this particular test. There are, just to let you know, for this year, we had 44 students enroll in our district after September 1st. To give you an idea, last year we had 33 total. So at this point, we've had 44 come in. And then we've had 28 students leave the district. So it's a net gain of 16, if you will, since September 1st, though actually the students out goes back to August. So some of those kids never really enrolled. So it's a little bit higher than 16. Last year we had 33 in and 42 out. So we ended up dropping some students, which accounted for some of the changes as well with less students. But I just wanted to share that with the board because you're going to see numbers don't match necessarily fall to winter. So we give that percentile score of like this % of kids grew. We're measuring the kids that were here for both tests. as opposed to those who came in. So just to specify that a little bit. And then the terminology, again, we use just as review. We have 3 tiers. The green will be tier 1, 30th percentile and above, tier 2, 29th to 12th. And then tier 3 is anyone in the 11th percentile or below. We'll give this test one more time this year. And we give it for K through 8 all the way through. And of course, there's a little early literacy initiative that starts first. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Berger.
Thank you, Dr. Cunningham. So looking at our first round of assessments, these are the English Language Arts assessments. There's 2 different types at the early childhood level. First one being the Early Literacy Foundation exam that covers things like alphabet, phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, and comprehension. And then there is also the STAR Reading, which is the developmental skills and application that include the higher level of understanding and comprehension, along with author, literary argument, and vocabulary. Some of our students in the 1st and 2nd grades will move on to the reading test. The kindergarten assessment is given in the early literacy only, as it is their first year, of course, within school. So looking at our first round of data for kindergarten, overall, we had 85% of our students show growth. Tier 1, we went from 20 to 45, tier 2, 18 to 10, and tier 3, 28 to 10. So we had a significant amount of students move out of the different tiers, showing us that 85%. Then when we go ahead and take a look at the kindergarten math, we're almost at about the same percentage, with 84 showing growth. Tier 1 going from 35 to 44, tier 2, 18 to 15, and tier 3, 14 to 8. So there's been a considerable amount of growth just within these first few months of school for our students who have been in the classroom for the very first time. And then this was a new assessment that we added this year. This is actually the Spanish language assessment, and this is provided to students that are part of our dual language program. And we decided that we were going to add this year because we wanted to be able to get an idea of the strength of the foundational Spanish skills that were within those classrooms. We only took it in the winter. We did not take it in the fall because, of course, we wanted to give our students who were just being exposed to Spanish for the first time some opportunities to learn these foundational skills. But you'll see here, it is a very strong Spanish base with 23 of our students in tier 1, 9 in tier 2, and only 2 students in tier 3. So we look forward to looking at this comparison from fall to spring to see how much more they've developed within the Spanish language. And then taking a look at ELA for 1st and 2nd grade, like I had mentioned earlier, there's a little bit of a comparison here because we have some students who moved out of that early literacy, met the score to get them into the STAR reading test. So we had very high growth in both grade levels. 90% in 1st showed growth, 93 in 2nd grade. So when we look at 1st grade, just in the early literacy, we went from 18 to 22 in tier 1, 9 to 7 in tier 2, and 19 to 9 in tier 3. And then many of our students that had shifted out of that exam completely went into the reading, going from 18 to 33 in tier 1, 1 to 2 in tier 2, and 2 to 1 in tier 3. And it's important for us to remember that the actual STAR reading test is a higher developmental exam in comparison to the early literacy. So even if the child is scoring in tier 3 in the reading exam, they are scoring higher than the children who are scoring in tier 1 in the early literacy, because it's a deeper comprehension and more of a silent reading type of assessment. 2nd grade, we still had 0 students that were in tier 1 for the early literacy. We had 3 students that went to tier 2, and then in tier 3, we went from 19 to 13. And then we saw a considerable shift when we look at how many students moved into the reading. So we went from 48 to 51 in tier 1, 11 to 14 in tier 2, and 23 to 14 in tier 3. So overall, ELA exams looked wonderful for all 3 grade levels, significant growth within this first benchmark. And then looking at math for 1st and 2nd grade, this was absolutely incredible data, especially when we look at 1st grade. We went from 56 to 66 in tier 1, 7 to 1 in tier 2, and 6 to 1 in tier 3, which means almost every single child in 1st grade right now is scoring within tier 1. So this was significant growth at 93%. Second grade went from 61 to 62 in tier 1, 23 to 25 in tier 2, and 13 to 5 in tier 3. We saw tier 1 stay pretty much the same, but we had more shift from that tier 3 and tier 2, which is always a good thing. So we're seeing more growth within there at 91% for second grade. One of the things that we noticed, especially with the math, with the new adoption of our Envisions program, what our students are actually doing in the classroom is much more complicated and much more complex in comparison to the multiple choice questions. So it was interesting when we had some of our students testing math, the problem would say something like 7 + 3, and it would give 4 answer choices. And our kids were wondering, well, where do you draw the picture? Where do I give my reasoning? It was much easier than what they were used to doing in class. So I think a lot of that also contributes to this high growth that we're seeing in this first comparison. And then Spanish scores very high in first and second grade as well. We actually had students that moved out of early literacy and into the reading test for Spanish. So first grade early literacy, we went from 15 to 17 tier 1, 7 to 5 tier 2, 6 to 1 tier 3. We stayed at 4 for the reading in tier 1 and 1 in tier 2. There were 0 students in tier 3 for the reading, which was a 90% growth margin for those students. And then in second grade, 7 and 7 for tier 1 in the early literacy, 7 to 2 in tier 2, and 2 to 1 in tier 3. And looking back at some of those scores with the higher margin that we see in the reading portion, we had students that completely were in tier 2 who tested out of early literacy right away. They didn't even need, they skipped tier 1 altogether and went right on to the reading. So it was significant growth for those students. When we look at the reading for Spanish, 13 and 18 in tier 1, 8 and 2 in tier 2, and 1 and 1 in tier 3. So 90-90 across the board for first and second in Spanish. So when we look at all of this, of course, our number one celebration of what the data is telling us is that there is significant growth in each grade level and in each subject. Overall, the building is just doing an incredible job. There is less than 10 students when we go through the data actually showing regression in kindergarten through second grade, again, in all of those subjects. The addition of kindergarten to the Spanish early literacy, again, is showing us that there are significant foundational skills for the Spanish language with our students that are part of the program, that they're developing them very quickly, whether they are first language Spanish speakers or not. It's happening very quickly at the early childhood level, which is great. So what we plan to do is a deeper dive into the data for the students who are actually regressing so that we can determine what are those specific deficits and needs, why are they actually happening. We're also going to be doing more with our data-driven team meetings to guide instruction, comparing our classroom data to our STAR data for specific students showing regression. Sometimes what we're seeing is that test scores are not always matching what children are capable of doing in the classroom. Sometimes what children are doing in the classroom doesn't match the test score either. So we're going to be looking at that a little bit deeper too, to figure out exactly why those regressions are happening. One of the things that we noticed when we first started digging into this is that we also had regression with students that were in the high tier 1 level. So it could have been a student that had already tested in the 95th percentile in the fall, and now their score had gone down and their percentile went down, let's say to the 88th. That is technically regression, even though the student is scoring so incredibly high. So it's not just looking at students that are scoring in tier 3, but also thinking about how are we going to continue to challenge our students who are high tier 1 for them to be able to continue to grow. We're also looking at our consistent progress monitoring system, and of course, continuing with the system of supports that we have in place. And of course, going along with our sharing our student work at both grade level and building leadership team meetings to enhance all of DLS, knowing students by name, strength, and need, and also providing teachers with the opportunity to talk about strategies that they're using within their classroom. With that, I will turn it over to Wois and Mr. Freiberger.
Thanks, Erica. Well, hello, everybody. I'm pretty excited to present on our data here. Thanks, Erica, for leading us off and passing it over. So pretty excited about our growth that we've made so far this year. I think we've done a lot of work like I mentioned in the fall, enhancing the amount of tier one practices we're doing and really making that a sacred time in our school. So in third grade, we went from 41 in tier one in the fall to 48 in the winter, 16 to 25 in tier two. And then a lot of those tier three, 33 to 17 went to tier two, and some to tier one as well. So that accounts for 78% growth amongst our student population in the winter, which I'm pretty excited about. In fourth grade, we went from 35 in tier one in the fall to 46 in the winter, 28 to 12, and then as you can read, 24 to 18 in the winter. That accounts for 70% growth in fourth grade. And then in fifth grade, 40 to 56, 15 to 14 in tier two, and then 28 to 15 in tier three. We are really moving a lot of the students into tier two and tier one, accounting for 79% growth. So a little bit of a deeper dive into this data. We looked at, in our SIP goal, we're looking a lot at, we're looking at F&P to see where these foundations of reading are happening, and also the more complex reading skills and how they're comprehending. And so in F&P, our goal is to have the same kind of 100% students showing growth in both in F&P and then in those integration of knowledge and integration of knowledge in reading. So we've seen 97% of students have gained at least one level in our winter round of BAS in third grade, and 80% are within their grade level band. Our goal is 50. And then in fourth grade, 91% have made growth on their F&P. We're up in the 80% too in fourth within that grade level band, which is 3 of those levels. And then in fifth, we're also seeing 89% of students grew from fall to winter on their F&P as well. So a little bit more modest growth in ELA than we're seeing in math, as you'll see, but we're confident that our SIP is working, and the more and more we get more aligned practices in the classroom with reading, that we'll see even more in the spring. All right, for math. Very excited about this. Our teachers have been working extremely hard with Vicki to make sure that the math program is implemented to fidelity, and they're really challenging students to go above and beyond and really increase their stamina as it comes to learning, because it's a lot harder than it used to be for them. And so we're seeing this play out, and it was really great to celebrate with the team in winter when we presented this. So 56, we went from 56 to 61 in third grade, 10 to 16 in tier two, and then 21 to 14 in tier three. This accounts for 87% growth in third grade. Really wonderful to see and great to celebrate. In fourth grade, we're seeing, we're going from 34 in tier one in the fall to 48 in the winter, 17 and 19 in tier two from fall to winter, and then 25 to 10, we're seeing those tier three students move out and into those higher tiers. 76% growth in math for fourth grade. And then in fifth grade, very excited to announce that we're seeing a lot of growth there as well. We're going from 38 in tier one in the fall to 57 in the winter, 23 to 11, and we stayed the same in tier three, which accounts for an 81% growth. All right, so these are our SLA, same thing. These are our students who are tested in Spanish on Spanish language arts exam. So we went from 21 in tier one in the fall to 28 in the winter, 18 to 14, and 10 to 3, which accounts for 73% growth in third grade SLA. We're moving into fourth grade. We went from 12 in tier one in the fall to 19 in the winter, 11 to 6, and 10 to 3 again. And then in fifth grade, we went from 27 to 32 in tier one, 12 to 4, and 8 to 4. So we're seeing the least amount of growth there in SLA in fifth grade. However, we're seeing some higher growth, 73% and 64% in third and fourth grade, respectively. So I can get into some next steps here. So we're seeing significant growth in third grade math and then within the tier one forms of assessment, we're showing students are showing ability to comprehend grade level text and grade level content, and they're showing it across the board. So even if they haven't performed on the test, they're still showing that in multiple forms of assessment and in ways that we work with them in the classroom, they're showing growth. In fourth grade, we've had double-digit percentile increase on math on average. So it's up 14 to 17% depending on which if it's dual or gen ed. And then we're having great growth in the integration of knowledge skills. So that was one of our FMP, that was one of the FMP skills that we're working on. Also a part of our SIP, because we found that with those priority standards, the integration of that knowledge into the final standard that they really have to get into, found that was a good measure to indicate whether or not we're seeing actual growth that's sticking, like actual authentic learning. And then in 5th grade, we had a 19 percentage point increase on average in math, which is excellent. And then seeing high scores in language and understanding and usage. So that's continued as well. So that integration of knowledge again, or that acquisition and usage of vocabulary is very high. Yep. So we're going to continue with our SIP. It's working well, and it's helping us really dive deep in our PLCs and determine next steps and next steps in what we're going to work on in those practices. And then we're going to continue implementing targeted instruction and grouping based on academic strengths and needs. So again, with with more of an understanding on Renaissance and how we can take those priority standards and focus skills, we've started implementing that into the way we make playlists. So we can vertically align both forward and backward to determine how we should, what skills and what aligned tasks we should implement in those personalized learning techniques in the tier 1. And then we're going to continue involving students in the process of goal setting and setting those in those personalized learning blocks as well. And then MTSS blocks, we're going to continue to group students based on mastery of certain priority standards. And then hopefully someday very soon with our instruction design committee, they're going to start applying for their own mastery, and we're excited to start that as well. So any questions? All right, cool. That's right.
I keep that microphone on here. Well, thank you, Mr. Freiberger. Appreciate it. And similar to Diamond Lake and West Oak Intermediate, there's a lot to celebrate at the middle school as well. Initially, when looking at the numbers here, they are a little bit more modest, which is typical from year to year at the middle school. And we have some things that we want to share and we want to dive into. We're going to talk about it in just a moment. But the kids did an excellent job. I'm obviously taking this, in December is always a little interesting at the middle school. Our kids are getting a little older, and it's always, there's those challenges and distractions out there as well. But overall, looking at the tiers across the board, from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there's just a lot to celebrate as well. 6th grade, with ELA, it went from fall 40 to 42 at that tier 1 level. So gained a couple there, 21 to 23 at the tier 2. And then tier 3, we lost one. That's what we want to see. And as you look at each one of these levels, that the tier 1s are growing and the tier 3s are declining. And that's exactly what we want to see here. 7th grade, similar, 55 to 61. They showed some nice growth at that tier 1 level. 28 to 22, decrease at the tier 2, and then also that decrease at that tier 3 as well, with 29 to 26. And 8th grade did really just a very nice job with their test taking as well. But 57 to 60% or 60 students scored in that tier 1, 18 to 21 tier 2, and then 22 to 18. Little smaller with our percent of students that grew, but doing a deeper dive into this, I wanted to look at how that cohort of kids have done from last year compared to this year. So our 6th graders last year are our 7th graders this year. And overall, just looking at this, our tier 3 has declined by 10%. Our tier 1 has increased by 11%, which is nice to see. And then also our 8th graders, that tier 3 numbers from last year, 7th graders have decreased 13%. And that tier 1 has increased almost 23%, which is great. So that, a lot to celebrate here, even though our number of students that grew are a little lower. And typically there's kind of a lag with reading scores compared to math scores. Math scores, they typically jump a lot faster. So hopefully our hope is that we're picking up momentum as we move into the spring testing period. All right, same thing with math. As I mentioned here, the results are, like I said, a little faster, even though we've had some inconsistencies with instruction, especially at math, at the 6th grade level. But implementing a new math curriculum is always there's always a sharp learning curve to that, and our teachers have done a phenomenal job with this. Overall, with our 6th grade math, we see that our number of students went up from 40 to 42 at that tier 1 level. 21 to 23. Ooh, sorry, I gotta keep going here. 42 to 47 at the tier 1, 17 down to 13 at the tier 2, and then 21 to 23, a little rise there at that tier 3 level. Seventh graders went from 64 to 69, which was a nice jump. 27 to 22 at that tier 2, and then 20 to 18 at that tier 3. And then finally, our eighth graders just kind of knocked this out of the park. I don't think we've gotten to that 70 mark in the time that I've been here in our school, but 62 kids, you know, at the beginning of this fall, you know, we went up to 70, which was a nice jump. 23 to 19 tier 2, and then at 12 all the way down to 10 at that tier 3 level. So as you see, the number of students that grew are kind of in that mid 60s, and I expect that to kind of increase here as our knowledge of that Envisions math program continues to take hold, and really, you know, comparing those apples to apples from seventh grade, you know, our sixth graders last year, our seventh graders this year, our tier 3 kids, that tier 3 number has decreased by 25%, which is phenomenal. And our tier 1 has increased 20% in those categories from sixth grade to seventh grade, which is nice to see. And then finally, our eighth graders last year, as seventh graders compared to this year as eighth graders, our tier 3 numbers have dropped by over 41%. And then our tier 1 levels, our tier 1 numbers have increased 20% as well. So, you know, like I said, a little bit more modest, obviously, than Diamond Lake and West Oak Intermediate, but still just a lot of great things to celebrate as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Pecoraro, who's going to talk about what we are currently doing, what we want to kind of focus on as we move forward.
Good evening. So looking at our data for the middle school, what does it tell us? Understanding that, yes, our numbers are slightly lower. We're not seeing the growth as much as we would like to see for our middle schoolers. So some of the things that we're going to do to address that would be continuing, like I think Dr. Berger and Matt and Mr. Peterson have said, is to continue with our school improvement goals that focus on our academic excellence, specifically with student growth in ELA and math. While increasing our professional excellence, strengthening instructional quality with data and instructional practices. So by looking at our data, taking a deeper dive into it, understanding what instructional strategies are we using, how is it affecting our learning, and what are some ways that we can improve. We're going to continue implementing targeted instruction and grouping based on academic strengths and needs. The next thing we're going to do is continue working on developing standards-based instruction. That has been something that the middle school has been working on a lot this year, is understanding our priority standards, making our proficiency scales. And as we move into the month of February and March, we're going to be looking at our assessments and how we are going to assess our students based on the priority standards and the proficiency scales. With that, we'll reflect on learning based on the standards and looking at how effective are we with our priority standards and what are we using to assess our students on that, and what instructional strategies are we using to make sure that our students are growing where we want them to grow. We're going to start collecting data on student progress with interventions, co-taught classes, and pull-out models of instruction while utilizing the MTSS process. And we're going to start, I think with Mrs. Flip and I are looking at what models of instruction are working and where are we seeing our students growing and where are we seeing our students not growing as much, to be able to place them in the best environment possible to understand what instructional strategies are using and how do we meet them where they're at to grow and learn.
All right, I'll take it from here. I have gotten some good feedback from Mr. Rogers to my right, your left, who is also a board member and has told me these graphs are too hard to read. So it was too late and you have them. So we were trying to utilize Climber. So if your eyes are hurting, I understand, and you've got a kindred board member spirit is advocated on your behalf to have me not do this to you anymore. So in the meantime, let's get through this together. So what this is showing really is where our students in tier 1 are. So the question has been, our students that are in tier 1, how are they performing? Because it goes 30th percentile all the way to 99. So really the dark green, which is that 75th to 90th, and then the 37% is usually putting you in the top percentile in that range. That group we like to see grow. That's very encouraging. So I've circled one example there. That's the first grade group in ELA. So they are high achieving, and also they're growing within tier one. So that's a great position to see, just so you're aware of the highest performing groups for this particular, our grade levels are in reading are first grade, second grade, and third grade. So those are highest performing, highest scoring students, if you will. If I'm going to go to math, same idea. We like to see those blue and greens grow, and that shows us that students that are near the top are also growing, that we're differentiating appropriately. And again, the size of the graph does not matter because it changes with the number of kids in a grade. That's really what it does. So in this case, for second and third grade, once again, are our highest performing groups. Those seventh and eighth grade are extremely close. They're not far behind. And we know they're doing well. We just, not that we want to brag, but we do, taking home the trophy at the Carmel Invite for seventh and eighth grade in math. So up the podium, feeling pretty good about that. So just again, high performing across the board is illustrated there. And then remember, we had a great question from the board just about, the students are more than a test score, and they absolutely are. And so this is really how we think about knowing our students by name, strength, and need. We just went through start reading and math. In the spring, when we present on social emotional learning, we'll talk about the DESA screener a bit and how we support our students that way. And how we're even thinking about how we redo some of our positions to support students social emotionally. The student target portfolio is going to be presented at spring conferences. That's a student-led conference, and they'll utilize that work product. And then standards-based report cards, we talked at the beginning about how we're trying to narrow and pick standards that are really meaningful to help our students grow from grade to grade. And then as Ms. Parker alluded to, looking at what are we doing to, as we progress monitor our students, is pulling students out the most appropriate way. Is having them in a co-taught classroom the most appropriate way to service them? And what is the data telling us? So just to go to that diagram again, and then just a few things that we're working on right now as a reminder, and a couple of these I'll actually highlight a bit more than others. But in terms of instructional programming, or after school continues, we talked about standards-based report cards, new math and writing curriculum is happening in the portfolios, and then our coaches are focusing on a number of different areas. And of course, we're pursuing high reliability schools level 2, which is, can we say, in every classroom, there's high quality instruction happening. We use that term model of instruction. Are we using good models that are effective for our students? And then on the right side, just to focus on a couple things there, particularly the bottom one. So we're working on the MTSS manual. We're doing a lot of good work with how we want to support our kids more effectively with who is growing, who isn't growing, and why is that. Summer Academy planning is something we're working on as well. We talked about this with the board earlier this year. So we'll put something out to the community this Thursday, but we are going to open up summer school for all of our students. So it will be K through 8 or K through, I guess, outgoing K through 7, if you will. And it'll all be at Diamond Lake School this summer, partially because of some projects that Mr. Rogers has alluded to in the past. We'll continue to talk about at the West Oak campus. And then band will actually be at the high school this summer at Mundelein High School because they won't have access to that space. But we will have everybody here, including ESY, same bus routes. We're rebranding it to make it more about enrichment and engagement. We've worked with a couple of vendors to get some great products. Our director is going to work with a team to help collaborate and design that. We're still working on a really cool name for it. We're not there. We've had some really not great ones that I came up with. So we're working on some other ones, but the parents will get an email Thursday saying, here are the dates, Monday through Friday, 8 to 11:30 at Diamond Lake School. We'll run it from June 3rd to June 28th with Juneteenth off on the 19th. And yeah, that's to cover the basics of what that will be. But we want to invite all students to that with emphasis on not only ELA and math, but really it's about enriching, engaging, career pathways, STEM, and application will be a lot of the focus of what we'll do. We believe our students will grow anyway, because remediation, as we talked about, only takes you so far. So with that, now what questions do we have?
If you remember back in the fall, or actually, it was last spring when we had a conversation with the fifth grade band, the fifth grade band students that were being pulled out of instructional time, and now they're going after school. And we have the majority, I would say 85 to 90%, Mr. Freiberger, you can give me the exact number of kids that go to fifth grade band. So they're getting that, or how many? 78%, which is super high for that, for the grade level, for any program itself. But that means 78% of our kids are staying in and getting that instruction. And obviously the assessments and the growth reflect that. So I just wanted to point that out too, because that was one of the things when we looked at the data, we were just very proud and impressed with how well the fifth graders are doing. And I know that was always a point of decline for many of them when you have 78 or 80% of our kids leaving for an hour a day to get band. So just wanted to point that out to you. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to leave the floor to questions.
For the middle school, did you not do the SLA, STAR test at SLA? Because Diamond Lake and West Oak Intermediate did, but because I didn't see that,
Yeah,
data.
no, I'm glad you saw that. And really the numbers of kids that actually took the SLA were so small that we just didn't include those. Yeah, so most of them, some of them were tested in SLA as well as regular. However, it was just not included.
I'll add
I
to
could
that.
always include that here in future.
Yeah, I'll
in
add
future
to that.
ones.
We were really thinking about if we wanted to do Apple twice a year instead of STAR SLA, and we
Mhm.
ended up just going with one and didn't totally adjust to like including SLA in here instead, if that makes sense. Just we thought maybe Apple will give us more, but it took so long to give. We've kind of made a decision not to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Ed.
And I'm also wondering, you said there's an influx of 44 new little kindergarten or preschoolers or something. I wonder how many middle school kids were new, which might have skewed that data. I wonder, like, compared to if it would be hard to like take their scores out, but kids who have been here, I wonder how they did
Yeah.
versus
And,
kids who have, like just moved, they've been transient for years and now they're with us.
Mhm.
Because I think these scores look great.
Yeah.
And I think that if you took that population out, what it would look like, I think would be even higher.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a percentage of kids that are going to be transient, coming in and moving out. And that's why I wanted to kind of show the change in tier ones versus tier threes, our numbers from last year to this year. Still pretty powerful regardless of who's moving in and who's moving out. So yeah, just trying to compare apples to apples as much as you can, but you can never do it really perfectly.
Anyone else have questions?
I have one question because I know that sometimes between fall and winter, there isn't, there's a little, even though kids are obviously getting new material and they're mastering concepts, but a lot of times, a kid like was mentioned who's, in the, 78th percentile and now, dips to the 76th percentile, that technically is not growth, even though obviously the other metrics that you're using show that they're growing. I would be very curious to see overall growth from fall to spring when they've had more time to kind of get those concepts to really like take them in and really work with them because, in noticing, especially at the middle school, as they're, at the beginning, obviously those concepts come quick and very, there's a lot of them, but they kind of soak them up. And I know that as our students move, they become more nuanced and there's a lot more slight changes that might take a few, some kids a little longer because they've kind of gotten all the very, very basics and now we're kind of getting some of these nuanced changes. So I would love to see where we're at in the spring because I have a feeling based on the percentages, not necessarily of growth, but of movement would hopefully reflect even more growth. So hopefully we can get, not just from winter to spring, but hopefully like fall to spring and kind of have a full year and see where all our students are at that time. So I just wanted to request. Okay.
I had a couple questions and I agree with what Elisa just said, because I think that a lot of times, especially at the middle school in December, you're not going to get the best testing environment for those kids on that particular day. And I know that that's a challenge. And also I think too, we know that growth slows down as they get into the upper grades. It's not going to be as exponential as you're going to see in the lower grades. But if our goal is 100% growth, there is a lot of room for improvement there. So I had a couple questions. With all the standards-based instruction work that you're doing, which I think is very important, and I don't want to discount that, is that going to translate into increased test scores? Like, do we expect that that's going to result in increased STAR scores?
Give my answer and you can give yours as well. But I think absolutely so. Really with the standards that we're working towards identifying and then also developing onto what level they've identified them, we're picking the most important things that we want our kids to learn and then tailoring. We have our assessments aligned with it, and we're tailoring instruction that leads right to that standard. So I think we can only go up from here. And I think that's only going to strengthen our instruction, strengthen our learning, and then also it's going to show that with our test scores as well.
Do you think that that's going to show up quickly or that it's going to take time?
With everything, everything takes time, and and it would be nice. We are not the first school to start diving into standards-based or standards reference grading, and every school is different. And what we've talked about with our teachers is that we need to make it our own. We need to make it for West Oak. We can't just steal from whatever school, because our kids are unique. Our environment is unique. Our school is unique. So is it going to take some time? Yes, it is. And we just can't copy and paste and expect it to automatically be there. It's going to take a little bit of time, and really, it's just it's a shift in mindset too for our teachers. We have phenomenal human beings that care about kids. I think our assessments can get better, and I think the way we grade and the feedback we give parents can improve, and that's what we're going to work on. And I think we're only going to go up, with this and with everything we're doing here from here on. What do you think?
So I think with our standards base, working with the standards, I think it is helping our teachers to understand what the Common Core standards are and to look at the instructional practices that we use in our classroom. We have wonderful teachers, but I do think we need small tweaks. And with our curriculum, we have great curriculum, new math curriculum. We have put other things in place. I think it's going to look at what are the standards, how are we using that to teach, and what are the best practices. We should see some growth within that because we're putting at the forefront what's important for our kids to learn and how are we doing that as educators to get them there. And I think by looking at our assessments and really aligning our assessments to that, like Mr. Peterson said, offering that feedback in a positive way, making sure that that feedback is on competence and not compliance. A lot of times we see maybe, oh, they turned in this work, but what does it mean to turn in that work? And what does that mean within the standard? So hopefully by, taking a deeper dive into it and understanding the standards and how those standards affect our practices and what are we doing to have our students learn and grow in that should show some growth for us.
Okay. And then my other question is, a lot of what you have on you're doing to address the learning gaps is to continue current practices. And those are written kind of generally, but are you making changes within there? Because with the amount of room you have for growth, I would think that.
Yes, and I think what we have discussed in the past and meetings similar to this is, the question is who's growing and who's not.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is that, our SPED population, our tier 3 kids, it just kind of seems like the gap is getting bigger and bigger. So what we're looking at is, we're looking at what we can do to offer supports for our teachers, resources for them, but also just how can we tweak what we're doing in those tier 3 reading and math classes, but also our SPED classes to help give them what they need to be successful.
And I'll just add, I'm sorry, Julie, go.
No.
Well, then I would love to hear you share it. I'm so excited.
We'll see. All right. So I think we are also looking at, with the MTSS model, looking at what the interventions are in place
not just with tier 3, but also with tier 2 and our tier 1 instruction. Are we doing it with fidelity, like Mr. Freiberger said? Are we making our learning relevant? So we're needing to look at our instructional strategies, our curriculum. You know, K-5 has all brand new curriculum, and they have guided reading, they have F&P, they have the whole Fontes and Pinnell kit and caboodle that is amazing. You know, I've proposed to Dr. Cunningham, like, what about at the middle school level? You know, it's not as structured as the K-5. So what can we do looking with, you know, as an instructional coach background data, our instructional strategies have to be more consistent and vertically aligned 6, 7, and 8. So we are looking at not just the data, but understanding the data and how that tells us to guide our instruction. So looking at the curriculum, whether it be math is pretty good with our Envisions, you know, that is more vertically aligned with what the students are learning. It's more of a Common Core based. You know, what about in ELA? We've had a lot of teacher choice with student choice, and how can we align that to where our students are, where the needs are, and to make it relevant for our students. You know, we have a huge ESL population. What are the best strategies we can use for those students to grow? Are we doing what we need to be doing to meet those needs? And that's something, you know, that I think with the data we're diving a little bit deeper in. Is our tier 2 working? Is pull out working? Is, you know, push in working with the co-taught? Where are we at and what are we going to do to improve?
Oh, it was really well said. So I think a very simple application would be, for example, we looked at intermediate and we said we're seeing a lot of our tier 2 students that maybe last year weren't growing are doing much better. Well, their exposure to being in the general ed classroom has increased. So we said we're hypothesizing, that's why, because we see a correlation. So we're hypothesizing potentially that for the middle school. And so we've talked about running some of our data of students that are in the gen ed that are being pulled out with support. Are they performing better? Do we need to redo some of our models for students that are in tier 2 or 3 to change some of those programmatic delivery pieces? And then high reliability schools forces us to ask, is our instruction really effective, along with standards based? So the implementation themselves doesn't necessarily change it, but it's the mindset and and how you're going to teach it that makes the hugest difference. So, yeah.
Question. Since you are basing, as most schools are, on the standards, are your grade levels looking at those essential standards? I thought I heard a little bit of it, just to say, like, a second grader needs to know like these couple of things in order to be successful in third grade, beyond, and in life. And I assume, are your grade levels, you know, having that articulation to say, hey, in fourth grade, we're covering, you know, these topics on, you know, decimals and fractions and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, oh, okay, so we need to make sure that, you know, we are hitting those standards, and to help keep, you know, to help so that we don't have somebody who winds up in sixth grade and they don't have a essential foundational skill from third grade. And are, you know, are we I mean, obviously we're small, you guys are on top of all of that, just recognizing that, hey, this is an issue. Like this kiddo needs to have this in order to be successful at the standards that they're going to be seeing in the future grades.
Can I answer a bit of that? Okay, cool. Pretty excited about this stuff. So yeah, so that's what a lot of what we're doing with our personalized learning and playlists, and what we're doing in the PLCs and the way that we're grouping kids. So we're grouping them based on priority standards, and we're showing teachers how to gather resources for that. And when a student, so a lot of times we'll hear, well, this student is below grade, they're performing below grade level on this specific skill. And that doesn't mean that we need to teach them a second grade lesson when they're in fourth grade. It simply means that we need to look at what the prerequisite skill is, and then how do we tailor that playlist, if you will, or that instruction in small group settings to align and get them and give them exposure to the fourth grade. So it's not necessarily like we talk about remediation versus acceleration. We're accelerating them, but in an appropriate manner. And then consistently looking at what if they're struggling with a division skill, they can, or they're struggling with a concept like repeated subtraction. We'll shift to that opposite operation. I mean, that's a simple example of like repeated addition, but we're looking at those skills so that teachers have a full toolbox in the way that they're delivering instruction. So yeah, we're looking at it all the time.
Yeah, that will continue to evolve as well as teachers find certain skills, standards they thought were good and made sense. Though every March, we take time to start revising during our late starts, and we'll use some of our early release time in February as well to start making changes. I think as we've learned more about focus skills, really something that was introduced to us after K-5 had written standards, if that makes sense. So there's revision now that some of it was what's put down, what each grade level thinks is important. And now they're trying to figure out what pieces did and didn't fit. And do we have a framework we can use? So we're leaning toward that one. Marzano uses something called the critical concepts. It's the same idea, only they charge us a lot of money to see them. So we like focus skills better for a lot of reasons, also because it ties to our tests. So that will be a continuing process, but it's so important.
Oh, my question is, has there been any discussion of like how we can rope parents in on this and kind of inform parents of like where their children might be missing some of these focus skills that they might not be aware of, so that they could practice at home, or that they, so that we're teaming with the parents, instead of just relying only on the teachers.
Yeah, I think we've talked about what is the best way to report progress is how we've really where the debate comes from. So we've been asking, is the portfolio, for example, the best way for us to give parents information? Because we find that PowerSchool doesn't necessarily paint a standard progression. So there's a few different ways we talked about doing it. One is students can literally depending on the grid, they can literally shade in where they are with that, and it's uploaded on the Seesaw is one possible way of doing it. We've talked about using the portfolio with like what goals the students set in each area, and if a standards-based unit is designed in like a textbook manner, there's maybe a pre-assessment, 2 to 3 formative assessments in the middle, or kind of mid-level checks, and then one at the end. And so if teachers can find a way to record that progress for parents to see, that's really what our kind of our next steps we're trying to figure out. And what we've tried to use the portfolio process to do. We're going to find out this spring how effective that is or not, to be able to do that. But another piece with our next year, one of our focuses next year will be looking at our unit design. And so one element that from our EL audit we realized is that there's a lot of things you can do with parent resources. And so we would like to see teachers all build in parent resources into every unit, if that makes sense. So that on the front end, if we can build a bank of those, we can have even if we can't give you like up to the minute progress, these are parent resources that speak to the skills we're going to use that I've already developed that I can share either on the front end or when a parent asks, if that makes sense. So I think that's going to be a valuable next step for us.
How would you like to receive it?
Yeah, I mean, so like, for example, after we're talking about the focus skills, I like pulled it up on Renaissance. I've got a first grader and I'm looking at like the math. I think math seems like it would be easier to translate to parents, maybe than the English language arts. But, I'm looking at like, just these general skills, and like, if I knew that my daughter was having a hard time with, subtracting 20s or I mean, just specific things like that, like, or knowing, like, count orally up to 120. Like, it would be great just to have that, like, information that, oh, she's not meeting this. She can only count to 100. and she doesn't know what to do after that, so that you could practice with those skills at home, I guess. I don't know. I mean, and I know one of my other children, like, they had a really hard time because of just like memorization of like math facts. And I think I didn't realize that until later on. And it was hard for her to kind of catch back up on those things, like things that like we memorized when we were little, like, 6 + 3 is 9, and just like knowing it, like without having to like, use your fingers or whatever. I mean, I just think, and I don't know how to get that information, but if I knew there were certain things to work on, I think that would be helpful, that I could help my children a little bit more at home. Maybe during the parent teacher conferences, or if they gave you like, your kids are doing great, here are some things to work on at home. Yeah, right. Yeah.
If I could jump in too here, it has been refreshing to start this transition. I feel just grateful that we have an entire year to prepare for the standards-based grading. What does, your child receives an A in science? Okay, what does that mean? So, really right after we dove into every standard that they may have for science, we've identified the priority standards for those that we want to make sure they know. Okay, so when you read those standards, I mean, for somebody without it, not in education, that could be really hard to comprehend. So really, after we identified the priority standards, it was, okay, let's put them into parent language. And then most importantly, let's put this into student language. And because the purpose of a report card is truly feedback. We want you to know how is Ellie doing specifically in science in this specific area. So, I think this only helps to improve not only their knowledge, our instruction, but also the way we are giving you important information back as well in the form of feedback with progress reports and, trimester report cards as well.
Peter, does STAR, I feel like I remember this, but maybe I'm mixing up tests. But does STAR give you the ability to show at a more granular level how students are doing in particular, like subsets of skills or questions? And could the parents actually get more detailed report of data?
It does, and I haven't seen a good report that it generates. And the problem with their granular skills is they will show you a skill that maybe a student is in the red on, and then they'll never see that skill again
Okay.
on the test, if that makes sense. And so they'll list a number of them and they'll decide that based on wherever they're scoring another area, they're not going to revisit that skill because at this point in the year, that's not what they're saying you should be working on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the test we found is most valuable, not necessarily as a tool that informs our instruction, but as a way that measures where our students are sitting relative to their peers
Okay.
nationally, if that makes sense. It does not generate a parent report that shows you those skills.
Okay.
It would be great if they did. And then they've bought EduClimber now, so they own that product. And so they're making their student profile page better,
Mhm.
but they haven't allowed you to, like when you pick a student's skills, it's a real mess when it shows you
Sure.
what to work on, but it would be nice, but it's not there.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just thinking, like, I think at the younger grade levels, it's probably easier to communicate out skills to parents than at the middle school level, especially since there is kind of less parent-teacher interaction overall, and you are dealing with a lot more teachers, for most students. So that I think is challenging. And as a parent, it's hard to, I think with the standards-based report card, it'll make it more clear, but you're still only receiving that data, on a much more limited basis. So. Okay, any more questions? No? Well, I did want to thank all of you. We didn't do that at the beginning, but we do really appreciate all of the data. We appreciate all the time that you spend kind of digging into where the kids are and the importance you place on this. So thank you very much for your work on this. Okay, and now we will move on to our business agenda. The first item on the business agenda is just reviewing the omnibus vote agenda. The second item on the business agenda is personnel, and that item is for action. Be it resolved, the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education accepts and approves the personnel items as depicted on the agenda. We have one retirement notification, we have 2 new hires, and we have 1 internal transfer. May I have a motion to approve, please?
Mr. Becker, Mr. Candela, Ms. Angarola, Ms. Bayless, yes, Ms. Hale,
Yes.
Mr. Houtman.
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan. Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. The next item up for action is approving the Lakeside Transportation Contract Extension. Be it resolved, the Diamond Lake School District 76 Board of Education approves the recommendation from the district to extend the agreement with Lakeside Transportation. May I have a motion to approve, please?
Second.
Mr. Candela, Mr. Houtman.
Yes.
Ms. Angarola, Ms. Bayless, yes, Mr. Becker, Ms. Hale,
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan. Yes.
That motion is also approved. The last item on the business agenda this evening is reviewing the press policies, issue 113. I don't know if you've taken a look at that. There's quite a bit of information there, and there's, if you look through the memo, there's quite a bit of new changes. So I would just ask the board to really read through the memo and take a look at everything so that we can discuss before we take action on this at our next meeting. It's more than just footnotes, which usually it's just footnotes, but there were a lot of law changes, and this goes through them. And some of them relate to the Open Meetings Act and to school boards in particular. Okay, that concludes our business agenda. Moving on to board discussion. We have the financial year 23 report.
Hey, you guys got a lot of reports today.
Mhm.
Well, this is just going to be kind of a brief overview. Traditionally, every other year, we'll have our auditors come and provide a brief synopsis of the audit. Based on the audit being almost exactly the same as last year, minus some fund balance type differences. I just elected just to give you an overview myself. And there's really only a couple different notes. So if you're looking at my document, I'm just on page 4. That's really where it just kind of gives you the general overview and what they call an unmodified opinion on regulatory cash basis of accounting. It's a big mouthful. It sounds a little different. When they say unmodified opinion, it kind of has a little bit of a negative connotation to it, but that's only because we are on a cash basis of accounting instead of accrual. And there's various reasons, but the district's been historically on a cash basis. At least since I've been here, but I believe for many, many years before that. So it's just a different form of accounting. But the other biggest thing is it talks about our year-end surplus. So we finished in the education fund just north of $1 million in the education fund, and overall in the operating funds were about $1.4 million in total surplus. And then last, it talks about, at the very end of it, if there's any material findings. So traditionally, that can be anything ranging from something small, like you didn't approve a student for the National School Lunch Program to get free lunch. They consider that a finding because some kid might not have got a benefit that they deserved. So the last 2 years, we've not received a finding, which is good. So otherwise, there's a fairly generic and uneventful audit, which is what you always want. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to go over that, or you'd like to meet to talk about this privately, I'd be happy to do that too.
Okay, sorry, no questions for you. I think that wraps up our board discussion. We had no FOIA requests. Notices of communications, we have kind of that CEDAW information, although David gave us information from that January meeting. We have the agenda for the March meeting as well. And then as usual, there's a number of fantastic highlights from the district. I don't know if you want to call anything out specifically.
No, just our usual, Sparkle Spotlight, our moment of the month, our January newsletter. But I did want to call out because Dr. Cunningham referred to it in his presentation about our math scores. And we, as you can see, we have 8 amazing students, or actually 9, sorry, who gave up their weekend a couple weeks ago. And so did Mr. Goldberg. And received first place at the Carmel High Middle School Math Competition. So congratulations to all those students, and I believe we have a proud parent sitting at the table. So congratulations, Mrs. Bayless, too. Yes. So wanted to share that out.
Yeah, that's fantastic to see. Okay, moving on. Do we have any public comments and petitions on non-agenda items? Holly has nothing. We're all looking at you. Like, no, thank you.
She's like, I want to go to bed.
Okay, there will be no public comments, and petitions on non-agenda items. We move on to others.
I just have one other that I want to share with you all. And we'd like to send the attached out as a communication. So it's pretty self-explanatory because the district was open on January 22nd when we had to close down Diamond Lake School due to the ComEd work and them turning power off. We had the middle school as well as the intermediate school were open. So after contacting the Lake County ROE, they said you do not have to make up the day. So I'll be sending this out Thursday. I'll send it out a couple hours earlier to staff, just so they have some FY, so they have a little bit of an alert, and then this will go out to families at 10 a.m. So I wanted you all to know in case you had any questions about it.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we will now move into executive session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity, and discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, whether for purposes of approval by the body of minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06 of 5 ILCS 120/2C21. And for collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. May I get a motion to adjourn to executive session, please?
Ms. Sullivan? Yes. Mr. Candela? Ms. Angarola? Ms. Bayless? Yes. Mr. Becker? Ms. Hale?
Yes.
Mr. Haupt?
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.